And here we are with another Natter That Matters, because, of course, all conversations count, those in your head and those outside of yourself. And today, outside of me, just on the other side of the screen, is the lovely Sarah Lloyd. Hello, lovely.
Hello, lovely. Thanks for having me on.
You're more than welcome. You know, when you find the good energy, you want to share that love, don't you? I thought, yeah, there's a nice bubbly woman. And if you can't see, if you're listening to this rather than watching it, Sarah has the most exquisite curly hair. I assume that's natural, is it?
It is. It is. I spent years trying to get rid of it as well. I think that's standard though, right?
It's standard, yeah. We always want what we can't have, don't we? Tall people will be short, vice versa. It's the world over. Introduce yourself, Sarah. I feel you'll do a better job than me, so that everybody.
So yeah, I'm Sarah Lloyd. I am the founder of Indigo Soul PR, or ISPR. And I mean, well, I've been in public relations and communications for 25 years, maybe more. And probably about 7 years ago, I had a bit of a awakening, a spiritual awakening, epiphany, whatever you want to call it. I was made redundant from my corporate job where I was at the top of my game, and then created Indigo Soul PR based on, I was at a retreat in Glastonbury and there were some amazing women sat in circle and they were all telling me their stories. They've all created these beautiful businesses, and it was kind of this aha moment. It's like, why are people not telling other people about this stuff? Why is this not, being spoken about? So I took what I'd learned in the corporate environment and now teach women how to do their own PR, but I also do it for them. And my main focus is around storytelling. So yeah, that's basically me, and that's kind of what I do. I help promote people from a place of power as opposed to their wounds, if you like, or their, yeah.
Oh, I love that. Do you know that there's so many spiritual people out there, even if they're on the beginning of their journey, or they're like me, I've been 25 years spiritual, I'm a medium, so you probably don't know that about me. But I don't really talk about it very often. And it's not, for me, it's not because I'm ashamed or anything. I just don't want to attract a whole load of people saying, oh, can you do a reading for me and speak to my gran? If your gran comes through in a coaching session, it's brilliant. I don't, that's then correct. But I just did an interview with a lady who said, oh, she said, I'm just developing myself spiritually and it's coming into my business, but I don't know how it fits yet, so let's not talk about it. And I thought, oh, that's weird, given I'm just about to interview you, who's the other way around. I would imagine it's all about mentioning that. I thought that was a beautiful kind of synchronicity. So what's your story then? So we talk about stories. What's your story, Sarah?
My story. So how far do you want to go? So I guess I'm all here for that. No, I guess like back when I was a kid, I used to, talk to invisible people, play with the fairies in the garden. I had more crystals and witchy things in my bedroom that you could shake a stick at. I kind of went through my whole clanad phase in my teens and and wanting to be Enya. And then all of a sudden I found boys and drink and work, and all of that kind of fell away. And so for probably my teens to my 30s, I was very much in my corporate, in my masculine. I was very basically I worked my way up the ladder like we were taught to. So I started at the very bottom rung, faxing and copying press clippings and things like that. Actually, before computers, cutting stuff out and sticking it on.
Yeah.
It was great. For a creative person like me, I loved it. I was sat there with the glue. That was my job. It's like, brilliant, I'm getting paid for this. But then I worked my way up, and it was all about strategy. And I worked for a major defense company. Then I went and worked. So it's quite interesting that my whole story was masculine. So I kind of went into the corporate world, worked for a defense company, went to work for a tax division. I went and worked for a construction company. So I worked for quite a lot of, and deep tech. So I moved into very deep tech. So I worked in-house in the PR departments, but I also worked for agencies as well. So I've got a real kind of all-round visibility of what goes on in communications departments and agencies, and as a freelance and as a journalist, because I've done a bit of journalism as well. and basically worked my way up, as I said, very masculine environment, where sitting at the CEO table, coming up with strategies and things like that. And then I got to a point where it was about 3 years before the pandemic, and I was the global head of thought leadership. So global head of stories, basically. So my whole job was about telling the brand stories in a way that customers would feel kind of attracted to their business, so that they would then buy the product. So that was kind of my role. So I was all about creating surveys and going out and speaking to people about, how this technology was changing their lives. And what was really interesting is I was with a company that did video conferencing at that time, and it wasn't taking off at all. No one really wanted video conferencing unless they were at home. And then 3 years later, we're all stuck indoors. So I just needed that. I was ahead of my game.
Me too.
So,
I tried to get people on Zoom for a few years before COVID. It was the best thing that happened to me. I tell you now. I was like, all of a sudden everybody's on Zoom. I'm like, wow, I've been people struggling, kicking and screaming, scared of the tech. You're like, you press a button, like it's really simple. So
it was great. Yeah, I remember my very first my interview for the company was all done on video, and I was petrified of it. So, and that's a whole visibility thing in itself, right? So yeah, after I kind of quit, so I got to a point where I had a new boss in the US. I'd at that point found my spiritual, so my kids were born, so they were basically the cracking open part. So that's where I started to really lean into my femininity, really started to tune into my intuition. I had angels come and visit me, and all kinds of weird stuff happening. And I was attuned as a Reiki master around then. So this was probably about a year before I was made redundant. So my spiritual journey was going alongside my corporate journey. So I was learning Reiki and learning how to read the tarot, connect with the angels, very much a follower of Rebecca Campbell's work, Kyle Gray at the time, Doreen Virtue as well at the time, and was kind of training in spiritual or spiritual, learning my spiritual tools, if you like, alongside my corporate. And the more I was in the corporate environment, the more I could feel the energy and the darkness, and like needed to leave. And so it all just kind of happened. It was amazing. I was in Glastonbury Orchard. I'd done this amazing breath work, and it was on Rebecca Campbell's first retreat, and she was saying, write down what your intention is. Where do you want to go next? And at this point, I was in the midst of a postnatal depression kind of breakdown. My youngest was about 8 months old, and I just didn't know what to do, because I was really kind of squashed by being a parent, working. So I negotiated a flexible working environment as well. So I was working 4 days into 5. So I was picking my kids up from nursery, shoving them into bed, going on calls with the US after that. And then I'd have my day off, which would be kind of meeting my kids again, and kind of every single week, because they were so little, they were like, who are you? I've been having fun at the nursery. Who are you? Who's this person? So it was a real interesting time for me. And in the midst of all of that, I was waking up to the fact that there must be more to life. And synchronicities happened. It was my 40th birthday. We'd arranged to go to Las Vegas, my husband and I, and we're flying in the Grand Canyon, and the pilot was telling me about his journey as a pilot, and he was like, so bet you think I've been flying helicopters for all my life? And I'm like, I really hope you have, because we're in the Grand Canyon right now.
I can imagine the fear factor involving, no, first time, is it? No.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, yeah. And he said, well, no, I changed my stars when I was 40. He said, I went from working in a tech, and I needed to hear the story. It was spirit talking, I'm pretty sure. It was I worked in an office. I saw a helicopter land outside the office, and I knew then I needed to follow my childhood dream of being a helicopter pilot. He said, so I built up my hours, and then I was able to get the dream job of flying into the canyon. And it was then that I was sort of sitting with this decision: do I stay in the business that I've been working in for the last 5 years, but do a different role, or do I take the leap of faith and try something else? And that was the decision. That was and I needed the permission from my, I didn't need permission from my husband, but I was just like, I really want to make sure I'm doing the right thing for the family. As I was the main breadwinner at the time as well. And it was kind of, look, just do it. And yeah, I haven't looked back since. It's been like 7 years now.
No 7-year itch then, she says, scratching her face. No 7-year itch then. That was a bit weird, wasn't it?
No, well, yes and no. I think that's just entrepreneurial life though, isn't it? To be honest.
It is, yeah. So what do you do now then? So what's the difference between what you do and other PR? That's my comparison in my head.
Yeah, I mean, so the way that I approach PR is very much about storytelling, but it's coming from that place of power, as opposed to getting coverage for coverage sake, chasing after any opportunity that doesn't feel right. I mean, that PR is by its very nature really pushy. You have to be in your face and pushing, but you don't really. You just need to sit with the intention that you have and work with the opportunities that feel aligned with you, your truth, and your purpose. And I think that, I mean, often people come to me after they've had experiences with other PRs who are either disappointed because it didn't quite go to plan, or they didn't get the coverage that they expected, or it just wasn't aligned. It's like, I remember someone saying to me one time, oh, well, I got all this coverage, but it was nothing to do with my business. It's like, oh, well, the point of doing PR is to kind of, in the most traditional sense of the word, is to amplify your business. But I guess where I've started moving into is, it's not just about promoting yourself and your business. It's actually about promoting your truth and your stories, because that is where the gold lies. I don't know if your listeners will have read the book The Alchemist, but it was that was another real turning point for me, when I realized that we go on these journeys, we go on these heroines or heroes journeys, and we've moved through the pain, and then we come back around full circle, and the gold is in the journey. That's the gold that we need to be sharing. So when I have sessions with my clients, I teach them about the gold that they're sitting on already. So it's about taking those amazing stories that we think aren't important, oh, it's just my life, but somebody else can learn from some of those stories, and that's the sweet spot, I think. So that's when it stops becoming about just getting PR because I need to promote this launch. It's about promoting the whole self. It's about promoting what you stand for as an individual, and that real, like, stepping into that real sovereignty of an individual. So that's the difference, I think.
Well, it sounds amazing. I love it. Sovereignty. I mean, any sentence that's got that word in it, it's fabulous, isn't it? So yeah, well done. I love that. And so, how do people work with you? Is it one-to-one, or do you do group stuff? Or I heard you say you do done for you. Like, how would somebody decide what to do and how to start with you, especially if they're not PR at the moment? I remember somebody saying to me they thought PR stood for press release, and I thought, well, press releases are part of it, but that's not all of it. There's
so much more. That, I mean, I think that's the tip of the iceberg. And like, when people say to me, what is PR, because they've probably got this they've got this vision in their heads of like Patsy and Eddie,
magazines, that's what most people think PR is.
But it's so much more than that. It's kind of understanding, where your story fits with the wider world, and how you can build connections through the media. But the way that people can work with me is I have a PR circle where we work with the seasons and cycles of the year, and the energies of the individual. So we go in, we work together for 3 months, and if we have a pause in between the 3 months to allow for like seeds to kind of percolate and things to come through. So we have a PR circle. I do like launch projects for people that are actually wanting to put something out pretty swiftly. And I do VIP kind of strategy, deep transformation support as well. So that's the done for you stuff, but it's not limited to just doing PR. It's about getting you seen in events and workshops and helping you to really understand what it is you're here to share and do.
Everybody thinks PR is really expensive. Is it? But you're right on the spot there, haven't I?
It depends. I think if you take your mind away from how much you're spending on it and actually what the benefits that you are receiving as an individual, then it's not expensive at all. It's about your transformation. But, you know, if you wanted, you could spend thousands and thousands and thousands with London agencies. I'm not a London agency. I don't charge thousands. So it depends, you know, it really does depend. And I think what it's about is it's honoring yourself, actually. Like, if you're not willing to put the skin in the, like, people will have no problem spending tens of thousands of pounds working with a coach. It's not too dissimilar, really. But the thing is that we always want this tangible result at the end of it. And
yeah,
unfortunately,
coaching as well, actually, you know, the tangible result is there if you need the tangible result. Sometimes it's a feeling, sometimes it's just genuinely a different feeling. It's it's quite hard
100%.
to quantify. I suppose there's lots of people would rather spend, I don't know, 5 grand on Google ads than with PR, because they can see the exact, you know, they can see the analytics, can't they? They can see what's gone on. So I would imagine it's probably one of your main competitors is actual, you know, paid for marketing, takes the budget.
100%.
Yeah, I've worked for many companies, you know, Volvo and, you know, American Express, etc. And you probably don't know this, but actually my life was brought up with designing and advertising agencies. So we used to deal with PR agencies. I can't believe we haven't, I don't know how old you are, but I can't believe we haven't mixed somewhere. So I worked for some of the big design agencies back in the day, like Conrad and places like that. So
Yeah.
so PR was always the expensive part, because we didn't like it, because we wanted the money for design and advertising. So arch rivalry going on there with the client's budget. We're like, no, let's grand over here, thanks. Don't spend it on that. You don't know what's going to happen. So it just takes me right back to my early 20s when I was doing that.
It was expensive. It is expensive if you're. I think it's like with anything, isn't it? It's like, you know, what are you willing to invest in? And yeah, it's so interesting you asked that question. But yeah, it does take me back to my 20s. It was like, remember being in pitches. Oh, sorry, we're going to spend our money on these people instead, and you'll be like, oh. But I think, yeah, I guess the thing that I love about the media is, at the end of the day, you just don't know who's going to read your stuff.
No.
And I think that is exciting, actually, because it might open up doors that you didn't even know existed.
Absolutely. I was featured ages ago on the Radio 4 Money Box. So working with on PR, I wasn't even featured. She mentioned me, and the impact on my business from that. I had so many people messaging me and saying, you're the lady that does money mindset and I need that. And these were all general public. I'm like, wow, should I be dealing with general public? Because at the moment I'm business to business. I work with business owners, but actually quite a few of those wanted to start businesses but were scared. So it really did open up. It really showed me, I mean, I've seen it millions of times through clients I had, but my own business was like, wow, yeah, you really probably should be focused on this more. And I've had even just this year had a couple of reach outs from, you know, some big profile magazines like Bella, and I'm just wanting my story, my coming out story, which they'd seen in the Mail on Sunday. So it's like, once you start on that road, it's almost like they kind of, I don't know if they talk to each other, they see things, they notice. I don't know if they look at archives, but I just think, oh, if I can get known for my business as well as I'm getting known for my kind of late life blooming lesbian kind of thing, then Actually, I think, which is fine, because it's all about transformation, it's all about empowerment, it's all about being yourself, doing things that scare you, which is what I'm all about. But actually, I'd love to switch that into the business part, because most people are really scared to put themselves into their business. Hence why I knew you'd be good for this. So yeah, so lots of lovely clients coming towards you who want to put themselves and their stories into what they're doing. And so what's your future? What do you see is going to happen? What's the vision for you? What's the next level Sarah story?
Next level Sarah. I mean, I'd love to work with bigger businesses, bigger coaches, people that are serious about getting in, serious about telling stories and sharing, how helping people show up. Because I feel like with anything, like I feel like I just want to help some of these master coaches that I see that I feel like they've got to a point where they're doing the same thing, like going around the same cycle, but helping them kind of get past whatever it is that's stopping them to get to that next level. And sometimes it's as simple as showing, going to the Daily Mail and sharing your backstory, because sometimes it's the backstory that's holding us back. And that's the thing that I've found. It's like, I'm not gonna talk about my story, because there's shame attached to it, or there's something that is making, I feel like the minute you share it in the media, that's a scary thing to do, because you're not in control of the narrative anymore. If you're just showing up on social media and you're posting it, and that's great, telling your story on social media is powerful, but you're still telling the story. When a journalist is telling the story, there's a little bit of fear there. There's a little bit of excitement. And like, you do often, if you work with the right journalist, you can get the readbacks and you can get, confirmation that the facts are right.
Absolutely. Touch wood, I've been lucky so far. I've had exactly that. They've sent me the actual full article. I've had full say if I wanted to amend things. They've fact checked things, because it was talking about my ex-husband. Did I want his name in it? Was this first girlfriend, am I right to talk about her name? I mean, in honesty, I've been very lucky. Maybe it's because of it being a lesbian story. I don't know. Maybe they wouldn't be so keen to fact check, that I bought something from Asda. I don't know. I don't know what. I don't know. Or maybe they would. They don't want a lawsuit from them either, do they? But yeah, I have been very lucky so far. But I do hear some. In fact, a woman who spoke at one of my very first summits posted today about being not misquoted in the article, but the headline they put on the top of it was absolutely diabolical, and it really wasn't her at all. And of course, she's had all sorts of, shaming and hate stuff and trolls on the online version of that publication just because of the headline. And she never checked the headline, because she didn't no one asked her, and she didn't ask, she didn't know. So there's so many pitfalls, aren't there, around this?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like just having somebody just to gently share. Have you put your URL in? Have you told them about your business? Have you told them, it's basically, it's a checklist of, if you do get featured in the magazines, ask the questions, because at the end of the day, if you don't tell them, they're not going to just know, because they will not go researching you. They will take whatever you share with them on face value, and face value alone. So it's about coming from that place of power, owning that story and saying, this is my business. Can you quote my business, or can you put a link to my business, or it's about just tiny little tweaks that can just make that coverage just that tiny bit better, and land, a bit more aligned with what you want it to do. And I've had this with a title in the past. I actually had a client, we arranged an interview around a client's book, and it was a great piece of coverage. It was like they read back the content. This woman, she was in her, I don't know, 70s, so she was extremely she'd been in OK, like she'd been featured on the cover of OK, so like she'd been everywhere before, so she kind of knew what she was doing. And I was helping her with this book launch, and basically she ended up having a big row with the editor, the features editor that was running this story. And the poor girl, she was about 25. And it was like, I'm not running with this title. And basically it's like, but the thing is that journalists have a boss, and the boss decides what the title is. And unfortunately, it's all about clickbait. You know, they're going to, and I say this to clients as well. So here's another tip. If you're going to go in the press, imagine the worst ever headline possible written about you and square that away with yourself. Because if you can imagine the worst headline and let go of the feelings it brings up in your body, because it will, because that's that moment of, oh my God, I can't believe that's out in the public domain, feeling. But if you're okay with it, then go ahead, and they'll do their, you know, you're almost saying do your worst, kind of like, if you're okay with the headline, if the worst headline in the world was like, you know, I don't know, murdered people and buried them under the patio, then yeah, maybe I'd be worried.
Like in 1987, I think it was it? I don't know what year it was. I love that. That's a great tip, actually. I think, do you know what I'm thinking? Why did I not have that fear? I'm pretty fearless anyway. Kind of the worst that could have happened was my parents dying, and that was 20 years ago, so I'm pretty fearless. And I just think, and also when I wrote my book, so back in 2019, where I was telling stories about all the jobs, it starts off, the first chapter of my bio is about different jobs and the beliefs I created about myself during those jobs. So actually, there was quite a lot of me in that book. And I remember the fear when I got the first copy of that. It's the same feeling, I would imagine. It was like, oh, this is going to go out into the world. What are people going to think? So I think I faced that fear then, actually, Sarah. I'm thinking, why did I not fear what they might put as a headline? Or why did I not fear any kind of reprisal from it? That's probably why, because I'd already published myself quite a lot of stuff about myself.
I think you, from what I know of you, Vivian, I think you own it. It's like there's not even that tiny little crack that's gonna. I think some people, if it's like, there was a woman that I also supported a little while back. She wrote a book about a deeply awful thing that happened to her, and she gave an exclusive to a journalist at a national newspaper. And what actually happened, and this does happen, is because it's in the public domain, people take that story and they cast it as their own. So she'd given this exclusive. Excuse me. Everything was all fine and in alignment, but what they did, this other paper took the story and put the worst headline you could possibly imagine. And it was about someone who'd had an accident. They'd accidentally killed their best friend at school with a javelin. And I mean, the book was all about it. She'd done a lot of healing around it. But what actually happened, excuse me, I've got a real frog. What actually happened was that story ran, but the family of the girl who died got in touch with the woman, and there was a massive healing that came as a result of that. So what was a really awful inflammatory situation actually then brought a lot of healing. So sometimes these stories have to be shared for a reason. Sometimes they push you into another space.
Yeah, definitely. Curious one. I know when people come to me and it's not even just their story, they haven't got in their business, they're not even in their business. It's like, it's very functional, very transactional. It's like, you know, you want to transform lives, you've got to be in it. Like, there's got to be part of you in there, you've got to share it. So I think it runs for me in my business deeper than the story itself. The story is the external representation of that, but the story they tell themselves inside is the problem. Self-talk, that fear of being judged, fear of who they are. And you're absolutely right, you have got a good measure of me. There's not really anything in my life anyone could do. In fact, one of my clients said to me, I'd have no surprise if pictures of you you know, in a sex club or you know, went into the press. I'd be like, actually, if my memory's correct, when I was in that scene, I looked much better. So I'd be quite pleased. I had a much better figure than then. I was about 2 stone lighter. I remember the underwear, and probably the one that might be the one that somebody might be able to publish, and I looked quite hot. You know, that is the truth of it, realistically. In fact, I'm just writing a book called She Empowers Herself, and it's all the different elements, which yeah, might tap you up for some help with somewhere along the line, as we're quite aligned, I believe, possibly, listening to us both talk. It's fascinating. We could talk forever, couldn't we? We really could. And I'm sure anybody would love to you. Do you have like your own podcast, or how do people get to know about you?
I want to start my own podcast, actually. So I am thinking, watch this space, basically.
Natural spirit.
Yeah.
I've got a female guide of yours giving it a little nag. She definitely wants to vocalize things, you know, most definitely.
Yes, I imagine that's my nan.
So she's like, you know, you've got to speak the world, because choices, you know, we've got choices now as women, whereas we didn't back in those days. So yeah, very much the case. Because I'm sure people would want to follow your journey. I should imagine you've got some lovely stories about some of your clients and how they've changed their business through that as well. So, and if you do start that, I'd love to come on it. Got a lot
We'd love to have you. Let's do it.
Lovely. Looks like the future's going to be very rosy for you, Sarah. So I'm going to follow your journey and say thank you very much. If you want to yourself follow Sarah, her website details will be underneath here. Go and find out who she is and how you can work with her. I'm sure there's a variety of lovely ways. And if there isn't, she'll get a little nudge from the business coach that she's talking to now that says, please find some ways that people can enter your world nice and easily and get some kind of, you know, security around that thought process. Because it's a bit scary, right? It's a bit scary to do this work. It is. So yeah, it's been lovely to talk to you, and yeah, go and find Sarah and follow her is my suggestion.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Anytime. Let me know when your podcast goes live. Let me know. We'll do it again, shall we?
Yes, we will. You can talk this time.
Yeah, all right then. I look forward to that. As you can see, I've got no problem with talking. I'm quite good at that one as well. It could go on forever. It'd be like the 24-hour podcast episode. It'd be like, just bring the wine, bring a drum, bring a fire. It'd be lovely. You have a great time. Yeah. Sounds like a good one. There you go. You'd have it. There we go. Do you know, this lady is definitely showing me a fireside kind of. Imagine if there was drumming at the beginning of it. She's definitely showing me your podcast. Definitely. That'd be really cool, wouldn't it? Yeah. Definitely cool and connected. Anyway, just remember what I said. You've heard it here first, folks. I don't own any copyright on what I've just said to Sarah, but hopefully we'll see that in the future. Thank you for being here.